It's a Nuri launch day here in South Korea. The country's indigenous Nuri space rocket is secure on the launch pad and waiting for the final calls to be made this afternoon. If there is a no problem, it'll blast off into space at 6:24 p.m. After inspecting the Fukushima wastewater-related facilities on Tuesday, the South Korean inspection team today is visiting a chemical study facility responsible for analyzing new flights. And Seoul and Washington decide to slap more unilateral sanctions on North Korea over illegal weapons financing cyber activities. We begin this afternoon at the Naro Space Center in Goheung, South Korea, where the country's very own Nuri space rocket is waiting for its final call before it embarks on a thrilling voyage into space for the third time tonight. Let's cross over to our Shin Se-byuk at the Space Center. Hello there, Se-byuk.
Good afternoon, Dami.
Se-byuk, so how are things looking there ahead of the groundbreaking mission?
Well, South Korea will take another great step into the space exploration world in about 6.5 hours from now. Currently, the tentative launch time has been set for 6:24 p.m. Korea time, and that is when South Korea's homegrown rocket, the Nuri, will embark on an 18-minute, 58-second journey into orbit around 550 kilometers above the Earth. Early in the morning yesterday, Nuri was erected upright at the launch pad, and as of 9:14 p.m. yesterday, officials have completed their pre-launch checks. Also, the Launch Management Committee said the liftoff can proceed as scheduled after assessing the weather and other factors. The liftoff, which will be Nuri's third, is likely to take place at 6:24 p.m. today, but the time could change. The thing is, besides technical factors, the weather is also a major influence that could decide the fate of the launch. While cloudy or rainy conditions wouldn't be a problem, but gusts and lightning could be. And that's because strong winds can disrupt a rocket that's racing through the atmosphere, and lightning can cause electronic components to malfunction. Well, as I said earlier, the committee has already given the launch the green light, but the final call should be made by 2 p.m. today, and it's possible that the actual launch could take place 30 minutes before or after the planned liftoff time, depending on the weather conditions.
That's great. Se-byuk, now this is Nuri's third launch. The first and second launches were in 2021 and last year respectively. Then what makes today's launch different from the last two?
Well, I mean, there are mainly two main differences in here. The first one would be this will mark South Korea's first launch of commercial-grade satellites, because in the first and the second round of launches, only the dummy and performance verification satellites were carried. But this time, a total of 8 satellites will be sent into orbit. And those satellites will conduct a variety of tasks, including ground observation and constellation missions. The second major difference is the participation of a private company in the project. Hanwha Aerospace, the nation's leading aerospace company, has been given access to key technology from Kari and a so-called technology transfer for the company's involvement in today's launch and 3 future launches. And this is part of a government scheme to nurture the new space field in order to create a self-sustaining space industrial ecosystem.
It indeed sounds so exciting. Now, South Korea is certainly eager for a great leap forward in the space industry, but there could be variables in the way, right? Like the weather, like you mentioned. But what happens if there is a delay like the last time? What happens next?
Well, in the case that the launch doesn't happen today, a backup date for the next trial has been set sometime between the 25th and the 31st, and the time should be the same. But as I told you before, the weather's super nice, no gusts or lightning in the forecast. So in terms of weather, there shouldn't be too much of a concern. Now back to you, Dami.
All right, the final calls for the launch will be made in the coming hours, so fingers crossed for that launch. Thank you, Se-byuk. Now, over in Japan, South Korea's Fukushima Inspection team concluded its first round of checks at the nuclear plant last night. With their on-site inspections continuing today, the team says their inspections are focused on scientific standards. Our Han Sang-woo reports.
South Korea's team of 21 experts dispatched to Japan to inspect the crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant wrapped up their first round of on-site inspections on Tuesday night. The team's leader told reporters that they had observed all the facilities they planned on seeing.
We concentrated on how and with what kind of system configuration each facility removes nuclides from the wastewater.
The 9-hour inspection proceeded under the guidance of the Tokyo Electric Power Company, after which the head of the inspection team, Yoo Guk-hee, explained that it had focused on checking the plant's multi-nuclide removal system known as the Advanced Liquid Processing System and the K4 water tanks currently storing the contaminated water, as well as the operation control room. He added that the group requested extra data from Japan regarding matters that required further examination. Yoo refrained from touching on the Korean public's anxiety on whether Japan's planned discharge of the wastewater is indeed safe, saying instead that his team will be focusing on the science.
What I mean is we're going to review it according to scientific standards, whether Japan's facilities are proper facilities and whether the wastewater's discharge process is being carried out appropriately.
On Wednesday, the second and last day of inspections, the expert delegation will visit a chemical lab that analyzes nuclides, the plant's tritium dilution system, and the facility responsible for actually releasing the wastewater. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
Seoul and Washington have stepped up their efforts to tackle North Korea's weapons financing illegal cyber activities. The two countries have once again imposed independent sanctions on the same targets. Our Cheon Myeong-kwan reports.
South Korea and the U.S. continue to take joint action against North Korea's illicit cyber activities, which help to fund the regime's nuclear and missile programs. Seoul on Tuesday slapped sanctions on 7 individuals and 3 institutions. This is the 7th round of sanctions put in place against Pyongyang since the beginning of the Yoon administration. Since October last year, South Korea has targeted 43 individuals and 44 institutions. Those on the list are guilty of either contributing to financing the regime's nuclear and missile development, training IT personnel, or evading sanctions. The individuals are also accused of violating the human rights of their IT personnel. Of those on the list of fresh targets, Seoul and Washington simultaneously imposed sanctions on Jinyoung IT Cooperation Company and its general manager Kim Sang-man. The target institution is an IT company under the North's Ministry of Defense and is guilty of dispatching IT personnel to Russia, China, and Laos. Kim Sang-man was responsible for illegal foreign currency earnings by being in charge of overseas IT branches. The joint sanctions in the cyber sector come about a month after the two countries slapped sanctions on the same target, Shimyeon-sup, for the very first time. Seoul's foreign ministry said South Korea and the U.S. have continuously sought ways to enhance the effectiveness of independent sanctions by designating the same target. Diplomatic authorities of Seoul and Washington are also jointly hosting a symposium in San Francisco Tuesday local time to discuss measures to block Pyongyang's illicit IT activities. The forum is the second of its kind after the two countries co-hosted an event last November to tackle crypto theft by North Korea. Cheon Myeong-kwan, Arirang News.
The United States once again included North Korea in its annual list of countries that fall short in the fight against terrorism. According to the U.S. State Department's Federal Register published on Tuesday, North Korea is failing to meet expectations on combating terrorism. North Korea joined Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, and Syria on the latest list, making it the 27th year that Pyongyang has been included. U.S. law requires this list of countries to be given to the U.S. Congress annually. Now, the export of military services and products from the U.S. to countries on the list is also banned. North Korea has previously reacted negatively to its inclusion on the list. Meanwhile, more movements have been detected at North Korea's Seohae satellite launching site, where the North could launch its first spy satellite. Experts say the launch may be on the way in the near future. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
This is a satellite imagery of North Korea's Seohae satellite launching site taken this past Monday. According to an analysis from Radio Free Asia, the image shows a new facility being built, which is believed to be the launch pad from where the North's first ever military reconnaissance satellite will be launched. Comparing satellite images of the same location from a week earlier shows that construction at the site is progressing rapidly, and North Korea may be quickly moving towards launching the satellite soon. And experts say it may be just a matter of North Korea looking for the best weather conditions to go ahead with the satellite launch. The Seohae satellite launching ground is located on the country's western coast in Dongchangli, North Pyongyang province near the Chinese border. This site is the North's only known permanent operational test ground for major weapon systems, which includes intercontinental ballistic missiles. Meanwhile, other satellite images show that North Korea is preparing for a massive military parade to mark the 70th anniversary of Armistice Day, which the regime often calls its Victory Day. 4 troop formations were seen moving to the medium airfield in Pyongyang, a military training ground in the capital. Voice of America says that while between 200 and 1,200 troops were seen in the recent images, that number could increase further as it gets closer to the anniversary day on July 27th. With North Korea potentially showcasing its latest weapons during the military parade and a spy satellite launch looming, watchers say the tensions on the Korean peninsula will continue to rise with little chance of dialogue between the two Koreas. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling People Power Party and the government have agreed to create a task force aimed at restricting protests and rallies that cause inconvenience to citizens. That's according to the leader of the PPP, Yoon Jae-ok, after a meeting between the party and government officials at the National Assembly on Wednesday. The task force, to be run by the Prime Minister's office for a certain period, has been dubbed a task force for establishing public order and protecting citizens' rights and interests. It will consider implementing measures like restricting rallies in urban areas during busy commute hours. It will also push for a revision of the law to ban overnight rallies. Despite continued economic uncertainty, business sentiment by Korean companies has increased in May compared to the previous month. According to the Bank of Korea on Wednesday, the business sentiment index for all industry reached 76 in May, up 4 from the previous month. The BSI surveys corporate executives on how they feel about business performance or industry conditions. An index score under 100 means that negative responses outnumber positive responses. The BOK says the rise comes amid expectations for a recovery in the performance of key industries and increased spending due to the resumption of face-to-face activities. South Korea's population continues to decline as the number of births drops. Data from Statistics Korea on Wednesday shows that the number of babies born in March came to 21,138, down 8.1% from the previous year. Now, that's the lowest figure on record for the month of March. Meanwhile, the number of deaths fell 35.2% on year to around 28,000. This brought the natural population decline in March to more than 7,000, continuing its decline for the 41st consecutive month. South Korea has submitted a request to the U.S. Department of Commerce to double its production expansion limit and redefine several of its terms in the Chips and Science Act. Our Moon Hae-ryun has this report.
The South Korean government has teamed up with several companies and organizations to submit a request to the U.S. Department of Commerce to redefine the terminology in the Chips and Science Act. According to a public notice announced by the U.S. Department of Commerce on Tuesday local time, Seoul raised issues with several of the Act's terms and conditions due to it placing an unreasonable burden on companies investing in the U.S. The most pressing issue outlined was the guardrail provisions limiting expansion of production in foreign countries of concern, including China. While the Act provides funding to semiconductor firms, one of the terms for firms looking for funding states that the expansion of advanced chip manufacturing in those countries should be limited to 5% for 10 years. The South Korean government, along with companies such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, has requested for this to be raised to 10%, double the current limit, as well as redefining what is meant by advanced. Another request was the clarification on the scope of restricted activities under the technology clawback term of the Act. Currently, engaging in joint research and technology licensing with foreign entities of concern means that companies will have to give up whatever funding they receive. The South Korean government has requested that companies currently engaged in joint research and technology licensing contracts prior to receiving funds should be allowed to continue those activities. Seoul has also asked for redefinition of the term foreign entities of concern, as the umbrella term is too vague and broad, and restrictions should only apply to certain companies that have been placed on the export restrictions list. In addition, a demand for the Department of Commerce to sign a non-disclosure agreement was requested due to worries that trade secrets and sensitive information could be leaked during the process to judge eligibility for funding. The Department of Commerce is expected to review these requests and announce any amendments within the year. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korean K-pop sensation 50/50 has nabbed a new record as one of the band's hits becomes the longest charting song by a K-pop girl group on the Billboard Hot 100. The song Cupid ranks 18th in the latest chart announced on Tuesday, making it 9 weeks in a row in the Hot 100. That breaks the previous record held by the song Ice Cream, a collaboration between Blackpink and Selena Gomez back in 2020, which was in the chart for 8 weeks. And 50/50 took the #1 spot on the Billboard Global excluding US charts, becoming the third K-pop artist to achieve the feat following BTS and Blackpink. The winner of this year's International Booker Prize, one of literature's highest honors, went to Time Shelter by Georgy Gospodov. Now, this piece was translated by Angela Rodell. South Korean author Cheon Myeong-kwan's novel Whale, translated by Kim Ji-young, was among the 6 shortlisted books. This was the 4th time a Korean book was nominated for the international award. The annual prize recognizes the best piece of fiction that has been translated into English and published in the United Kingdom or Ireland.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. We begin in Russia, as Moscow on Tuesday claimed to have defeated a group of anti-Putin Russian nationals who crossed the border from Ukraine to attack the southwestern city of Belgorod the day before. The attack prompted the region's governor to launch an anti-terrorist operation. Russia says that it killed 70 fighters and insisted that they were Ukrainian. But Kyiv has denied any links and has claimed that the attackers acted independently. Meanwhile, 2 Russian paramilitary groups say they were responsible for the incursion, with one of the groups saying that it still retains control of a small piece of land despite Russia's operation. The initial attack on Monday left 8 people injured after the attackers shelled a village. 3 houses and a local administrative building were also damaged. Shifting to the tech space, Microsoft has unveiled a number of updates to its range of services, including a significant upgrade to ChatGPT. According to CEO Satya Nadella at the Microsoft Build conference in Redmond, Washington on Tuesday, the OpenAI software will now be linked to live search results from Microsoft's search engine Bing. ChatGPT's answers were previously limited to information from 2021 or earlier. The service is already available to paid users. It will be rolled out to its free service later. Other changes include expanding Bing plugins for businesses, which would see their services advertised on the web browser's AI chat service based on a user's question. And finally, a watch belonging to the last emperor of China has been sold for $6.2 million. It was sold by auction house Philips Asia in Hong Kong on Tuesday. Manufactured by Patek Philippe, the rare Rev 96 Quantième Lune is one of only 8 known pieces of its kind in the world. It belonged to Emperor Puyi, who became ruler of the Chinese Qing dynasty at the age of 2 in 1908, before being forced to abdicate just 4 years later. Over 2 decades on, Puyi was made leader of then Japanese-occupied Manchuria. He was captured in 1945 after Japan's defeat in World War II and taken to a Soviet prison camp. His story was documented in the Oscar-winning film The Last Emperor. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We had mostly sunny skies with decent air quality to begin our Wednesday with refreshing morning temperatures. Afternoon highs are rising fast to the mid to upper 20s this afternoon in most parts of the country. But strong sunshine is beaming down, boosting UV rays from high to very high across much of Korea. So please keep your sunglasses and a hat handy to protect yourself from that strong sunlight. Now, weather conditions in Gohung in Jeollanam-do province, where South Korea's space rocket Nuri is scheduled to be launched this evening, will be under partly cloudy skies with light winds, so the weather should be no problem. Now, afternoon highs are slightly higher than norms this afternoon, and as the air quality has returned to normal levels across the nation, it should be a good day to spend some time outdoors as long as you have that sun protection. Skies are getting gray with frequent rain in the forecast as we get into 3-day weekend, with Saturday marking Buddha's birthday. Now that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Goodbye.